Hey, everybody. We are here with a special pair of guests today. Very excited about this one. Our first guest, he is was a talent booker on the Chris Gethard show. Probably the most called out talent booker in the history of any show. I've never known one by name before.
Yeah.
And he's currently working with Marvel and doing all sorts of awesome stuff. He also had another job that I want to talk about a little bit later. We welcome Patrick Cotnoir. Patrick, how you doing?
Good. I'm so curious what that other job is, but don't tell me yet.
Oh, never.
Oh,
And our other guest, from things like the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt movie, the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, also the Chris Gethard show, ran for president at age 35. And we welcome Connor Ratliff. Connor, how we doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking.
Now I combine you two and say that both of these guys are 2/3 of the George Lucas talk show, the coolest talk show on the internet right now.
That's true.
And very excited to talk about that because it was just an amazing idea that was born from stage that became this internet thing that is awesome. And if you are not checking it out, check it out now. But if you're checking this out and not checking that out, I already don't trust your judgment, so don't. All right, so let us get started. Where did you guys originally meet?
Ooh, do you want to tell this, or do you want me to?
Yeah, we met working on when the Chris Gethard show originally was a stage show at UCB. Patrick, did you ever go see that show as an audience member?
No, I didn't. I never saw it. My first one was the dance battle episode of MNN, so it's like episode 7 or 8, somewhere around there.
Yeah, basically, I was a fan audience member when it was a live show at UCB New York, and then it became a public access show in New York City, and then Patrick started working on that after I'd already been involved in that from the beginning, and then I don't remember exactly how it happened that we started working together so often, basically on everything, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think it was
I actually, when we met, but I actually remembered, I think, our first interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you remember this. This is exclusive. You're getting exclusive right now.
We met the first day that I remember us meeting. We were doing a remote piece where a couple of Chris Gethard people were singing Christmas carols on the New York City subway, and it was very awkward and uncomfortable. And Patrick was just this kid who was like helping out, and I thought you seemed very together, very with it for a kid.
Yeah.
What was our first interaction?
I think our first interaction, I actually found the DMs, and it's me DMing the Ratliff 2012 for president Twitter. It's going to be embarrassing. Don't look.
I'm going to look at it right now.
You were going to get tickets for the Arrested Development reunion.
Oh, right. That was our first time hanging out as friends.
I didn't go to that reunion.
Oh, it wasn't the reunion, but we waited in line for the
banana stand. But I was like, how's the line? If I go now, do you think I'll get tickets or something like that? And I did not know you at all.
Yeah, you said, saw you in line for reunion. I left because I was too far back. If you're not buying 4, I would love to pay you for 1. I'm at Gethard show every week, and I think you're hilarious. If not, no big deal, and have fun.
I thought you were funny.
Yeah, we were in line when Netflix did a banana stand and gave out frozen bananas in New York, and that was, I think, one of the earliest times that we just hung out socially.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, that's awesome. And that is where I came to know you guys. I came into the Gethard show fairly late in the MNN. I think it was right around the time that the announcement that the original pilot was being made. Mm-hmm. And so I heard about that, and I watched and I saw some clips, and I'm like, well, this is really cool. And then I went back to the beginning, and I think you guys were on Fusion by the time I finished. Yeah. So it was such a fun thing. It's such a fun show that still, I mean, the community of Gethard still exists. I'm a member of Facebook groups, and anytime anybody pops up, like Connor, when you're on any show, you're on Last Week Tonight or something like that, there's a still of you on in that Facebook. They're like, Connor was there. And I mean, what is the support like from that kind of a group for such a thing that you don't know that really anything's going to come out of it? It's a fun UCB show, and you get like a local crowd, and then you do what should be a local cable access thing that actually stretches, all over the world.
Yeah. I mean,
you go ahead.
I think that show never had the biggest following, obviously. Otherwise, everyone would know about it, but everyone doesn't. But it had such a loyal group that a lot of people would stick with it for a long time, or a lot of people would be very heavily into it for 6 months and then move on, and then a new person would be into it heavily for 6 months. You know, a lot of people, they're like, yeah, I watched it a lot when I was sad and depressed, and then I got out of that, and now I don't watch it anymore because I associate that with the time of my life. And that's good, and it's great, and it's awesome that we can help people get through that. But then there's people who are still into that world and those people, and I think that's been very helpful, especially for something like Lucas, because when the world changed, we didn't know what we were going to do with the show. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, Connor. We didn't know what we were going to do. Some of us didn't want to do anything. Some of us did want to do a lot of stuff. And it was just like, how can we make this work? How can we figure this out? And we really lucked out that Gethard had this channel that he was building, because it had the built-in audience of Geth people. It had the technology backup support that we could use. It had the producers behind the scenes running everything that I couldn't handle or that Connor couldn't handle or whatever. And it's great that the world still exists, that we can go and promote it in that group of 5,000 people, and they will tell their friends and whatever, you know, and that the community is still there even if the show is dead, which is a good thing.
Yeah. And I mean, sorry, go ahead.
And it went on, you know, the thing is, because, you know, the lifespan of the Gethard show was that it really had one full season as a real TV show, because both seasons on Fusion, it was sort of like it was a channel nobody got. It was hard to like find ways to watch it. People were still mostly watching it on like Facebook Live and YouTube as opposed
I think, and this is not a slight against your show at all, I think more people will hear this podcast than watch the Gethard show on Fusion.
I'm really sad if that's true, only because I know what my numbers are. But
but it's interesting because it was a thing that existed for basically about a decade, and it incorporated so many people, like the ebb and flow of performers and talent that was involved in the show, that, for instance, like Dave Bloodband, who was the human fish on the Gethard show, like we're both on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of crazy because we're not on that show because we were on the Chris Gethard show. Like, it's just a coincidence. Yeah. We don't like interact, but it is just like, oh, it's at the point now where it's splintered off into a lot of different worlds.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that, because I mean, you guys were all UCB guys for the vast majority, and so you're just a bunch of talented guys who actually, that was kind of a nexus for you all at one time. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of, you know, Big Bang have all gone off and done your own things. And I want to start with you, Connor. I want to start with the podcast Dead Eyes. Mm-hmm. Born of a story, or at least the first time I heard it was a story on the Gethard show. Can you tell, just for people who don't know what it is, can you tell people what Dead Eyes is?
Yeah. Dead Eyes is a podcast. It's a nonfiction comedic investigation podcast. And the inciting incident is something that happened to me back in the year 2000, which is I auditioned many times through a process, and I ended up booking a very small speaking role on the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers. And then the day before I was supposed to start filming my scenes, I was getting ready to go down. I was living in Liverpool, England at the time. I got a call from my agent saying, you need to get to London right away, because Tom Hanks was directing the first episode I was supposed to be in. They said, Tom Hanks has seen your audition tape and he's having second thoughts. He thinks you have dead eyes. So I had to go re-audition in person for Tom Hanks. And I did this, and then I was immediately fired. And it's always been kind of this, you know, that was a traumatic thing at the time, but I thought it would be, and then I was also told as I was being let go that they've decided to go with a more military type. That was what I was told, which if you see the scene that I was supposed to be in, this is not true, because the character is played by, a short character actor. It's played by, it's not like they recast it with, you know, The Rock or something. It was very much a character part. So I am using that story as sort of like a gateway to make a podcast about failure and success and regret and memory and kind of like, and how weird show business is. And, it was kind of this podcast that for a few years, whenever I would occasionally have meetings and people would say, do you have any ideas for podcasts? And this would always be sort of like the last one I would say. I said, well, I have this idea, and nobody was really into it. And then I finally reached a point where somebody was into it, and then we made the pilot, and then it ended up at HeadGum. It was actually Ben Schwartz, my friend Ben Schwartz, who actually helped it become a podcast, because he had heard the pilot and he was like, talked it up to HeadGum, and he was like, you guys should, because I think a lot of people thought, well, that's a funny idea, but you couldn't really do more than like 2 or 3 episodes. And I think Ben was sort of vouching for me that, like, I think this guy will be able to like milk this for all it's worth, which we've been pretty lucky about so far.
Yeah, and I tell you, like, I remember very specifically when you told the story on Gethard, and because it's something that it's not like it was being built up to, it's not like it was a scheduled thing, it was just kind of a throwaway in the middle of this episode.
Shannon O'Neill mentioned it. I didn't even bring it up. It was Amy Poehler was there and they were doing this thing, and Shannon made a joke about it. And then to give context to the joke, because it got sort of a weird laugh, like it was a non sequitur. Mm-hmm. I then like had to explain in front of the audience and Amy Poehler like what had happened.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I remember I laughed my head off about that, but it was the vulnerability, and I think that's something you did a lot on that show, is you just kind of had this is what it is, and it was just, you laugh not at the story, because it's sad that it's like, oh, a young actor lost a job that could have been pretty killer, but it's like, just the way you told the story, I was just in tears, because it was like, you just put yourself out there in such a way that, oh.
Yeah, I think it's funny because mostly we've gotten a really, really positive response, lots of good reviews and stuff. But every now and then there'll be someone online who'll say something, and it's almost always someone who hasn't actually listened to the podcast who'll be like, oh, get over it, like, move on. And we'll not realize that the tone of it is not, it's not really that I'm obsessed or that this is all I think about. I mean, I think about it a lot more now just because it's the podcast. I have to work on the podcast. But, yeah.
I've never told you this.
What?
All those comments?
Yeah. Oh, they're you?
They're me.
Oh, Patrick.
I'm really sorry.
What a little troll.
He's just trying to keep you humble. You know, you can't be George Lucas on the George Lucas talk show without getting kind of ahead about it, right? So he's just keeping you on earth. I will move on now to Patrick, because Patrick is working for a little upstart called Marvel currently. And tell us what you're doing there right now.
I'm the editorial and talent producer over there. So I book a lot of their podcasts and a lot of their video content. So anytime they have a guest come on for a video or one of their, any of their wonderful myriad of shows that they have going on, I'm usually the person in charge of that. And then we go do Comic-Con live streams and premiere live streams in the normal world we would. So that's been really fun. I went to 4 movie premieres last year and 2 Comic-Cons, and it's been a weird whirlwind of a year.
That's awesome. How does something like that come about? I mean, not that you were inexperienced as a talent.
Yeah, insanely, it ties back to Gethard again. I think it was Christmas Day 2018, 2018. I got a message from Gethard's manager's assistant being like, hey, dude, hope you're doing well. Not acknowledging it was Christmas. Hope you're doing well. My friend is leaving this gig, and I feel like you might like doing it. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah. Because I'd mostly been unemployed since Gethard ended, mostly by choice. I needed a break. I think we were all burned out a little bit towards the end. So I didn't really work until November or so, and I took this gig, and I was booking conventions, like smaller conventions, Harry Potter conventions, and like Alien conventions. It was a wild gig. And I literally had it for a month and a half, and then was like, guys, I'm so sorry. I gotta go. It's Marvel.
Yeah. I refuse that anybody wouldn't have understood that.
To their credit, they're like, yeah, of course, go. So that was it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun, and I've gotten to travel a lot. I was in LA like 8 times last year, which is always, it's a nice vacation to go for, a week or whatever. It's fun. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Now, from one talent booker to the person who booked the talent for this episode, can you rate my ability as a talent booker?
I mean, we're here, aren't we?
I guess.
The only
that's
sport that
it.
matters.
truly, I think that's all that matters. Is if they show up, you're doing your job.
Yeah. Do you lose the points if you had them but then lost them at some point along the way?
I would say, Connor, what do you think? Because that's happened to us a bunch on Lucas.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
It's not our fault. It's nobody's fault. This shit happens all the time.
I'd say there's probably a difference between when you lose a guest for Lucas and when you lose a guest for like Marvel or the Chris Gethard show, like or like lose a guest for the Gethard show on MNN or something. If it's a free gig versus a paid gig, if it's what the level, because like whenever we would lose a guest for the George Lucas talk show, it always was kind of like, well, of course. I think we almost assume. I always kind of go in with like, there's the possibility that we're going to love all of them.
Which happens. It's happened.
Anything can come up.
Yeah.
Because we've had episodes where we've lost me or we've lost Griffin because there was one show, I still remember it, where I was filming on Orange is the New Black, and I thought I was going to be able to make it back in time, and I genuinely was like 20 minutes too late to be able to make it, because there was a point where I was racing to get to UCB East, and I thought, I'm going to make it for the second half of the show, and then there were train delays, and I was just like, damn it, I can't even. I
don't even remember what we did.
We had Casey Jost play J.J. Abrams.
Oh, I don't think I was there for that one either.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. There was a show that I have no memory of that Brandon Scott Jones was the guest, and Casey Jost played J.J. Abrams and subbed, and I think it went well, but I have no idea.
That's so funny.
I wanted to ask that question because I always have such a horrible anxiety of, I reach out, I've been lucky enough to get people to come on the show. I've had some directors of a couple of the movies. We've had some comedians and whatever. Yeah. And then you do that follow-up and I send the follow-up. I'm like, oh, I just lost them. I think I might've said something and it's nothing. It's just like, oh, just following up and letting you know that I'm sending the Zoom information. And I'm like, nope, they're not going to like that. And it's every single time I'm like, yeah, I definitely just lost them. And I'm sitting there now.
Here's the thing. It's so rare that it's your fault. It's so rare that you did something, but there's no way to convince yourself that it was not your fault. You always are like reading over an email being like, what was the thing that like tipped it over the edge? And it's like, no, they were just busy. Like something came up and it's fine. Just move on with your life.
Yeah, there are people, because I feel like between getting people for Dead Eyes and various other things, I feel like I spend a fair amount of my time emailing people and like begging them to do a thing and trying to make it not seem like begging, trying to make it seem like it's going to be a cool, fun thing to do. And sometimes you'll email someone, you'll get a great response right away. And then you'll email them back a week later to confirm it. You won't hear anything from them. And you think, oh no, what did I do? What did I say? And then you'll email them a follow-up, and then they'll think, well, now I've really blown it because that looks desperate.
Yeah.
And then you'll email a third time, and they'll respond immediately. And it will be as if those other
It was as if those other desperate emails never even came in. And my name's Connor, and I get a lot of good guests. And 35 is old enough to be president. And
I'm convinced.
It's me, George Lucas.
All right. That's awesome. We've just very briefly lost Connor. I'm sure he'll be back momentarily. And there we go. He's already signed him back. Welcome back.
I finished your sentence for you. It's fine.
Yeah, seamless. It was. You're still muted. Yeah, no, that was. Yeah, that was. Yeah, it was absolutely seamless. You wouldn't have even known that it switched over.
We always finish each other's
sandwiches.
Nobody actually uses the word sentences anymore. I think it's so into the pop culture now. I mean, if people didn't get it from Arrested Development, they got it from Frozen, who stole it from Arrested Development.
Well, we stole it. We are stealing it from Arrested Development because
I'm stealing it from Frozen.
There you go. Excellent. And yeah, so I mean, and the booking has worked out really well for you guys, because I know on Dead Eyes you've had people from Band of Brothers come on and all this stuff, and very, very recently George Lucas Talk Show, you pull in Kevin Smith, which is a really good grab for that episode, which I've seen. I haven't seen the whole episode of that one, but I've seen clips from that one, and it was just a riot.
I mean, I get it. It's 3 hours long. It
No,
makes sense. I haven't seen the whole thing.
yeah, I just haven't seen it all yet. I've seen a bunch of your episodes, including I have seen the entirety of your Star Wars. Watch watch everyone.
Not even Patrick can say that.
I haven't seen it all. I
Fell
haven't
asleep
seen
for hours of it.
Yeah, I've not seen half of Attack of the Clones and all of Revenge of the Sith.
One of my all-time favorite things about that episode too is because Patrick, you can find all of these on YouTube. Patrick disappears, and you just see the timer that's running, and then every now and again a head pops up like a Mortal Kombat, like Toasty, and Chris is like, "Oh, I have something quick. I have to add to this," and it made me laugh every single time.
Good. Oh, good.
But we want to talk about George Lucas Talk Show now, obviously. It started out as a UCB show. How did that all come into being?
I had done, there was a system at UCB where you could audition for shows, and they call them spanks. And basically you put up a show, and if they like it, they'll usually give you some notes and develop it, and then it becomes then you get a run as a show. And I had done a one-man show where I'd written it all, and I played a bunch of characters, and it was basically it was local authors night at the Mid-Missouri Public Library. That was the name of the show. And we did it once. I thought it went really well.
I saw it. It was fun.
I thought the audience loved it. And then I didn't get a second show. Like, they basically were like, no, you're not getting a second audition for it. Like, and I was really surprised. And then I thought about it. And I thought, well, because this was, I don't remember what year it was, maybe 2013, something like that. And I remember thinking, you know what? I probably am not, it's not a sexy enough premise, and I'm not enough of a draw to be able to bring in a regular audience for a run of this show. And that's not why they rejected it, but that's why I thought was like a good reason. And I thought, the next time I do a show, I'm going to have a big pop culture hook that will bring people in who have no idea who I am. And I was trying to think, like, what do I know about? Because I at the time I remember thinking, like, my next show will be something. I remember thinking that the working title for whatever the show was going to be was Harry Potter Night at Hogwarts. That was the name of the show, which I think is a very subtly dumb title for a show. I don't know what the idea would be, but I'm like, I don't know enough about Harry Potter to make up a Harry Potter show. I'm like, I'd been doing this George Lucas character to amuse my friends since the special editions came out. Actually, maybe even since they were like in development, where I would just pretend to be George Lucas, and my friends would ask me about Star Wars, and I'd tell them the real answers for things. And so I thought, oh, maybe the easiest thing is to just do this as a talk show where I'm George Lucas and the guests are really themselves. And then that was it. And Patrick was the warm-up comic at the very first test show that we did, because the person who was supposed to be the warm-up comic didn't show. And so I just turned to Patrick and said, will you do the warm-up?
Not a performer.
Not a performer, not a comedian. He has no act.
Nope.
You can see video of this. Video exists online. It's viewable. And I think you do better than a lot of people that I've seen at open mics. Most people I've seen at open mics.
Yeah.
Just like effortlessly charming.
Hey.
And then Patrick, you were just around so much that I think you said that I called you a producer before.
Yeah, it hit a point where I was like sort of helping out. I was like filming the shows for you and stuff just so you had them, I guess. I don't know. And then it hit a point where we were in a conversation with somebody and he goes, oh, this is Patrick, my producer. And I was like, what are you talking about? You've never said that. Like, I don't know. No, I'm not.
I think that's so great. I don't remember doing that, but I think it's so great that I did that. That you were just like,
funny.
That I thought of you as my producer and you didn't know that is really funny to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good way to fall into a job.
Yeah, I mean,
but so, and like you guys said, so COVID happens, the UCB theater closure happens.
What?
What? Sorry. And these things happen, and you guys are up in the air what you want to do with the show. So what do you decide to do this in an online format, and then how do you decide what it's going to look like compared to the stage show and all that?
Well, originally back in like late March, early April, I had taken a couple months off from the show, and Griffin was actually doing these because Griffin Newman, who plays Watto on the show as the talk show sidekick, he did took the 2 months that I was going to be away to do these one-person shows as Watto. So we already done like a one-man Watto show, and my next show back was going to be in May, and it was going to be our annual Star Wars Day show, which we always try to make a very big deal out of. We try to make that a really special, fun show. And
yes, we're booked. It was like ready to go. We were fully good to go.
Yeah, I saw you had your prizes ready for the for the a-thon. You had some great stuff there.
Yeah. Patrick, who were the guests? I forget already. Who were the guests? Are we allowed to?
Kenny, who came on she's been on twice now. She's the voice of Ash in Pokemon and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then David Mandel, who's the showrunner on Veep and like a Seinfeld writer in SNL, and he wrote a giant Ralph McQuarrie book. Like he was like the guy. It was so exciting that we had him, and then Yeah.
And so Patrick and Griffin were saying, look, people are going to be really depressed on Star Wars Day and people who come to our show who look forward to celebrating Star Wars Day that way, we should do a show for them to like, give them something to cheer them up. And I was just not interested in doing it. I just thought it's going to be bad. It's
like very actively not interested.
Yeah, I said it's going to be bad, and more people are going to see this than ever saw the live version. So it's going to diminish the reputation of the live version. Yeah. Like people are just going to, if we do it and it's bad, people will retroactively say that must have been bad for 6 years at UCB Theater. And I was like, I just don't want to do it. And then they said, well, what if, and actually one of our ideas was, I said, look, if we do it, we have to come up with something good to justify it if it's not as good in terms of it being funny or being a quality show. And I said, well, here's one thing. If we actually get George Lucas as a guest, then that's worth it. And we did try. We really did try to actually get George Lucas. Mm-hmm. And if we'd done that, that might have been the last one we ever did. If we had just gotten George Lucas on Star Wars Day and talked to him for 5 minutes. And I want to say that door is still open. We have not closed it. Anytime the real George Lucas wants to come on the show, he is.
Honor promises, if he ever comes on, that's the last one we'll ever do.
Until the next one we do after that. Yeah. And but here's the thing. So we tried that, and then the other thing was, well, what if we do it for charity? And at the time, there was a GoFundMe, because when UCB closed, a lot of the staff, a lot of the interns, workers, and things were left in the lurch, and some of them were able to collect unemployment, but it's just, it's like everybody, it's a bad situation all around. And so there was a GoFundMe that had been set up to help the UCB employees and staff. And we thought, well, if we could raise a little bit of money for that, then that will make it worth doing. And then I said, what if we watch all the Star Wars movies? And they were like, well, that's going to be like 9 hours or something. And I said, no, all of them. Like, what if we watch not just the original ones that Lucas did, but also the sequel, and also the Ewok movies and the holiday special. And I made it this 30-hour thing. And that
was really the only way you were interested in it.
Yeah. There was a moment in the thing, where you argue to him. You were like, you said that if we don't do the Ewoks, that this whole thing isn't worth doing.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
And I think the weird thing is, during that marathon, because I think if we had just, if one thing hadn't happened, we might have just done the marathon and then thought, well, that was a fun thing. We'll do that once a year or do something like it. But then during the marathon, Chris Gether came on, and somehow through an offhand remark Griffin made, a challenge was laid down that we would watch all of Arliss, all 7 seasons of Arliss at the end to add it onto the 30 hours. And this got agreed to in ways that I'm not fully clear on. And we ended up, and then I think it was because I said, if we get up to, I set a goal that at this point we'd raise like $3,000 or $4,000.
You said 20,000, or you said
it was if we raised another like $12,000 at that point. But there's no way we'll raise another $12,000. And then we did, and I got very depressed because I remember saying on the stream, people are just giving money to hurt us. This isn't about helping people. I was really angry. And then someone said, what if we raise another $5,000 on top of that? Then we don't have to watch Arliss. And we did it. We got the additional $5,000, so we did not have to watch Arliss. But then over the course of that week or two where we were recovering,
we should also say at some point Robert Wool, the star of Arliss, came on the stream under the impression that if we hit this certain amount of money, we would watch Arliss.
Yeah.
And then when we hit the point where we were like, well, we're not going to watch it, we were like, well, he came on thinking that we were going to watch it, so we should probably do something.
And it fell. And there were $12,000 worth of donations that may have been made under the idea that we were going to continue the marathon and keep watching Arliss, which would have killed us. Like physically, if we'd had to go another hour, I think I would have been in serious physical trouble.
Yeah.
But then we were talking about, we thought, well, people did donate under the presumption that we would watch Arliss in some way. So then we're like, what if we do it in a reasonable, healthy way, which is we'll watch one season every Sunday for 7 weeks. And I think that changed the show. And it was also, Bobby Wool was so nice to us. He would show up every week and hang out with us at the end of it during the season finale, and then sometimes afterwards for hours. And it was such an organic occurrence that we took these two things that are completely disparate, which is Robert Wool's HBO show Arliss, which is about a sports agent. It has nothing to do with George Lucas at all. But over the course of the 7 weeks, we sort of like realized that, oh, we can make this show. I mean, we've always done that where we'll have a guest and we find the way of making it a Lucas thing. But this is really 7 weeks that, for the most part, we were talking about Arliss more than we were talking about anything related to Lucas. But we were still trying to do it within the weird world of this show. And it really did it felt like the DNA of the show was being altered a little bit each week in terms of what it was, what we could do. And so and by the end of the Arliss stream, we'd already agreed to do a 1,600 pen complete series watch along on the 5th of July. And then we started saying, well, what if we did a version of this show that wasn't, 12 hours long, but was a reasonable amount of time, like 3.5 or 4 hours long per episode. And that's what we've sort of arrived at the moment, is like once a month we'll do a charity watch-a-thon that is long. But most weeks we'll just do a reasonable 3.5 to 4 hour show.
Reasonable. Very reasonable.
It is, and I think it is reasonable under COVID, and given what we are, we can't, there's a lot of things we can't do, but this is one thing that we can do. Like, there are a lot of things we can't make the show be, but we can make it be 4 hours long.
That's the truth. When we record too, we usually, because we do full-length commentaries, we usually record 4 to 6 hours a night, and we don't start until 8:30 because I got to wait till my kids are in bed, because we do this out of my living room. Yeah. So that's just that thing. And I remember the one time we did an all-nighter, specifically because my co-host wanted me to drop him off at Toys R Us to buy a Super Nintendo Classic the day that it came out. So we stayed up all night and did movie after movie after movie, and then I went and dropped them off so he could line up and maybe get stabbed. I don't really know what happened after.
Who knows?
But yeah, and I remember how hard that was, and we documented that. It's on our YouTube. We documented between movies and when I dropped them off and when I was like in the car all alone and stuff like that. And then I heard you guys were doing this, and at first I just thought you were doing like the Skywalker saga, which would have been plenty. And then I started hearing, oh, it's also like the other parts of the story. And then it was like, oh, no, it's not just the other parts of the story. We're going holiday special. We're going Ewoks, and I was like, blew my mind. And it was all in.
Well, here's the thing. I'm very passionate about the Ewok movies are not on Disney Plus yet. Mm-hmm. And I think the Ewok movies are essential viewing for anyone who claims they're a Star Wars fan. Yeah. And one of the things that I think that is really important that the Ewok movies do, because like I saw them as they came out, as they aired on television, and they're very weird, and they're kind of like, it's interesting to see an official Star Wars movie that does not have the budget of an official Star Wars movie. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they do, I think, is they take away a little bit of like the huff and puff of how important or how sacred a Star Wars movie is. They really are, to me, they ground this whole saga in like, you know what? Sometimes the Star Wars movie is just about the Ewoks and they're having an adventure. And it, to me, they were always something that, you know, because I was a kid and I loved Star Wars, and as the movies came out, and when the Ewok Adventures came out, I was like, I like these, but they're weird and they're not as cool as the regular Han Solo Star Wars movies. But you know what? Like by the time the prequels came out, I really had a healthy attitude towards like, these are just Star Wars movies. You know, that like, as important as they might be to you, if you like, the Ewok movies make it impossible for me to ever feel anger about a Star Wars movie not being exactly what I might wish it to be, because they are weird and fun and sometimes good and sometimes bad. That's true of all Star Wars movies, and that's true like even a movie like Empire Strikes Back, which is perfect. If you ask me to go through and nitpick it as a be as critical as you can, I could probably find a bunch of things I'm like, well, this isn't great, or I don't like this so much, or whatever. That to me, that's such a waste of time. And the Ewok movies, I think they are the cure for the sickness that is like people being mad about Star Wars.
That is a wonderful philosophy about it. We've talked about stuff like that at length just when we cover the venom of the debates about especially the most recent trilogy and stuff like that. They're just movies, and I can't understand why people it's beyond when episode 1 came out, it's like, oh, it's not how it was when I was a kid. It's now just like, you've ruined not just my childhood, but somehow life as we know it by deciding that.
It's an interesting thing, because this would come up in the show a lot. And what I would really talk about, and I do believe this, is that life is hard and getting older is hard. And disappointment in life is a thing that people struggle with. People get to a certain point where they are unhappy. And I think sometimes it feels better for some people to be able to point to a Star Wars movie and say, that's what I'm upset about. Because if you have to turn that gaze inward, that is a much harder conversation to have, to actually say like, no, I'm actually not upset about the Star Wars movie. I'm upset with the person I have become.
Yeah. Oh man, that is, you are just a man after my own heart. I couldn't have even articulated it any better, as my choppy dialogue right now is indicating. But then, and I go even further into that too. I was a big fan of, I got the radio plays and all those different things with Mark Hamill and John Lithgow as Yoda and stuff like that. And I would say to people, they're like, I love Star Wars. I'm like, you heard those radio plays? And they're like, oh no, what radio plays? I'm like, what radio plays? Yeah. How do you not know all about radio? And I would start getting crazy.
I used to, what did I have? I had A New Hope and Return of the Jedi on tape. And I would listen to them to fall asleep at night. They were like in the rotation of things I would like just have in the background. And it's crazy to think, I need to re-listen to them, because it's crazy to think that they were like 16 hours long.
Oh, intensely long.
I don't understand how that's even possible, thinking about it now, that they would like just add so much stuff and be like, this is here too now. Like, it's so wild.
It also is that's also a thing that helps you understand, like the fact that like Mark Hamill is in those.
Yeah.
But that most of the main cast is replaced, that it kind of becomes like a regional production of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Where it's it also helps canonize another person can be Han Solo for longer.
I also compare him to, I'm reading the original Marvel run of the Star Wars comics now. Oh, yeah. And those are crazy. They're like, there's just pirates, like regular pirates in it, like riding a pirate ship, and like just crazy things where the guys who were originally writing it, you could tell before Empire came out, they were like, there's not going to be another movie. We'll just do whatever the hell we want. And he's like, who cares? But they're great. And they're so weird and strange. And like, you can tell nobody really gave them rules. They were just like, yeah, sure. Talking rabbit, whatever you want. Pop them in there. Who cares?
Yeah. There's also an interesting thing that only occurred to me fairly recently, which is that like a kid now who gets into Star Wars is suddenly there is this, decades worth of lore to dig through. There's books and comics and just the movies alone. There's 30 hours of movies. When I was like 4 years old, there was one movie and it was 2 hours long and that was it.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, there'd be another movie. And then a few years later, a third movie. And then that was sort of it for a while. So for most of my childhood, most of my Star Wars stuff was me playing with the toys and making up my own Star Wars things. And it made it more of a creative experience. Whereas now I feel like there's an interesting thing that happens, which is that a Star Wars movie comes out and the audience has an expectation for what they want to happen in it, where they're like, if Rey and Ben Solo aren't like this, or if they are like this, then I'm angry about it. Like, if your thing doesn't happen, and it never would have occurred to me as a child to go to a Star Wars movie and be like, well, Darth Vader better do this, or else I'm going to be mad. Even though I would have played out dozens and dozens of different plot lines where Darth Vader, either died or won or whatever. You then go to the Star Wars movie and be like, oh, this is the real thing. And you just be grateful to see it.
Yeah, but I definitely recommend, people who like Star Wars, even in a casual sense, go check out those other things, because it does, like you said, open you up to a lot of different possibilities. Those radio plays, in addition to the original trilogy, which features, Mark Hamill and Billy D. Williams both reprise their roles, and that's
Anthony Daniels, too.
Oh, that's right. Anthony Daniels is the only one who's in all of them.
Are they on like Audible or Spotify or anything?
I believe they're podcasts. I think you can find them as podcasts.
If you cannot find them, I will cut this part out. I will send you a link to my Google Drive where they are located.
They're also, you can find them if you need to find them.
Yeah. So that is fine. I have all of them, but they also have the like a kind of a Knights of the Old Republic thing where it's all way back in the day, and it talks about XR Kun and all these different ones. But like Ed Asner playing Jabba the Hutt in, like, it just blew my mind.
Wild.
It was so good. I've just to dip back really quickly into the marathon. At what point? Now there's two different points I want to talk about. At what point did you realize what you had signed up for? So like you're sitting there, and not that you're too tired or anything like that, but you're like maybe like 4 hours into this thing, you're like, oh, I've got another full day of this left ahead. And at what point were you just mentally finished and just kind of getting yourself through it?
I mean, for me, it happened fairly quick, because I think starting at midnight was such a choice. It was a choice. And I knew I didn't have any guests, or I didn't have any planned guests from like 2:30 a.m. our time to like 6 a.m. our time, which ended up not being the case, because like JD stopped by and Gethard stopped by and like a ton of people stopped by. So I was like, great, I'm going to sleep now, because I originally also was not a part of the show when it was a stage show. So when we were doing this, I was like, I'm just going to be the guy who is changing the clock. Like, that's what my job is. That's why I'm on camera. I'm going to sleep. I'll get up, change the clock, go back to sleep. I couldn't fall asleep. Like, the whole time I was trying, it just wasn't working. So I think that was when I was like, oh, shit, I better just get up and I'll do it. And like, I'll sit through it and we'll see what happens. But I didn't get very tired until like mid Last Jedi. That was when it like, which is crazy because that's a long time. Yeah. But like, you can see mid Last Jedi into Rise of Skywalker is when I crashed.
Okay.
I don't remember when.
You don't remember most of the day.
I don't remember when things happened or what I felt. I remember feeling angry when it was looking like we were going to have to watch Arliss, because I just knew I couldn't do it. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to add another hour to this thing that I didn't think I could make it through. I do remember, for instance, like, I think
we could not have watched Arliss.
We couldn't have watched anything. We could not have watched
But if we're being realistic, that would have been like 2 more days. Like, it was not going to happen.
Yeah.
Making it through the credits of The Last Jedi was enough.
Yes, exactly.
I do remember, was it Gil Azari and Paul Scheer? They were both in the latter hours of it, right?
They were late.
And I do remember being very grateful. It was very well-timed bookings, because they were a jolt of energy at a time when we needed it. So I remember that, getting to a point where I'm like, boy, I'm glad these guys are here, because they're really helping to keep us afloat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also points midday where you can see Connor just completely checked out, or Griffin just completely checked out.
Yeah.
Which is totally reasonable.
Very reasonable, especially not just because you're doing something that's such an endurance. You're doing it in character, improvising every minute of it. And I don't think that like people can wrap their brains around that. I know they don't think it's scripted or anything like that, but I don't think that they wrap their brains around. Like, I fancy myself a low-level improviser,
Sure.
and to be able to do something at that level for that amount of time is, for lack of a better word, gross. It's just, it's crazy that you could do that.
Patrick, did we start saying yippee in the marathon?
We must have.
We must have, right? Because that's the only time I would have seen that scene. Because there's a thing that we say on the show. We lean into the camera and say,
I think we did, because Serenato Cheney was like coming on around that point, and we started saying it to her. So that was like one of the first things we did.
Yeah, because there's a scene early in The Phantom Menace where Qui-Gon Jinn tells young Anakin he's going to like leave his mother.
Yeah.
And his response is yippee. And we latched onto that as like, that's the first sign that Anakin is bad to the bone, is that he's abandoned his mother, and the word that he says is yippee. And now we'll occasionally just say the word yippee. And
I'm gonna go make sure my windows are closed, because I have a tropical storm going on outside my window right now.
Oh my God. Okay.
Wow. I mean, that's so interesting the way he sort of personalized that I have a tropical storm going on. This is so much bigger than just Patrick.
So his neighbor is fine. There's Sunny.
Yeah. Well, which is funny to me, because I feel like that's the thing that the show that we're good at, is that we're good at finding things that are not worn out Star Wars jokes, because I don't think anybody was quoting yippee as like a Star Wars quote.
No.
Typically prior to us.
No, I think it was noticed, but I think it was almost repressed by most people.
Yeah, and there's so much other stuff that caught on from that movie that there's a lot to, people focused on other things, but I think like even if other people may have referenced it before, like we're good at finding things that aren't worn out and sort of making a meal of them,
No. And to be able to do that, and like I said, getting through that amount of time without doing that and staying in character, and it was, I mean, it's such a corny thing to say, but it was a legitimate tour de force. Like it was never frustrating as a viewer to go through, and I mean, legitimately, I didn't watch it all in a row, but I watched it.
We did.
I know you did. I've done that. Just as a human being, but I wasn't having to entertain people while doing it, nor raise money. Which, I mean, again,
I think if it had been 24 hours, it would have been a lot easier. It really was the extra 6 hours that made it difficult. I think 24 hours would have been hard, but the second you start it, you're counting down to 24, and it kind of feels like we can do this. The fact that you're going past a full day, and then you get to the point where it's like, we've been doing this for a day, and now we're going to keep doing it for another 6 hours. I think it was like 6.5. I don't know. That's just really, really makes it, And
I think that was the hardest part, were those last few hours.
Yeah.
And it's also like something people might not realize. And obviously Connor and Griffin have never done something for that long, but I had also never been on camera or like, in a mode where you had to like perform for that long. And it's just exhausting on your body in general. Like even on a show where we're not doing 30 hours, I'll wake up this morning, we had a 4-hour show last night, and my body still hurts. So it's just, it's fascinating to see what happens when you have to be like on and, going for everybody.
Not so easy, is it, Patrick?
All these years I've been saying, you guys, you got it easy.
You above the line, folks.
Hurts your body to entertain people.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to mention Griffin. as he is absent. Griffin, another person I have a great fondness for. What is it like working with him when he's in character of Watto and George is a stoic fellow as it is, so you kind of have to maintain, you know, a straightness while a person is being Watto at your face. So what's it like working with him, like against him on that kind of thing?
It's easy. I mean, Griffin is easy to, I never even think about it. Actually, both Patrick and Griffin are very easy to, there's no part of it really that I find like challenging in fun ways, but not, there's no part of it that is like, I never even think about it. You know, it's just like, we're pretty good at reading each other and knowing what the other one is going for most of the time. And when we don't, it's kind of delightful. Like every now and then, one of us will be like building something up and the other two will be kind of like, what is this? And that's fun, you know? We've always just had a good rapport. And even though Patrick is new to being on camera, like the rapport that we have with him on camera is pretty much the same rapport that we have with him off camera, you know, that like, there really isn't a big dividing line. Because sometimes you do have that where you have a really good performance energy with someone, but then when you're not in scenes together, you're kind of like, you don't have anything to say to them. You don't, you know, sometimes that does happen where you're like, oh, we're great at doing improv together, but we don't like have anything to talk about outside of scenes, you know?
And I think this has also turned into by far the most we all hang out or talk to each other. Just because like you and I would see each other weekly at AskCat or like, you know, a few times a week for whatever. But like now it's every single week, at least 4 hours, probably talk on the phone beforehand just to make sure everything's okay. You know, like it's become more commonplace for us to be talking. And I think that ultimately helps the show just because we know what each other is going through and what kind of mood each other is in. And it, you know, it all feeds into the show.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And you guys have said this is now obviously evolved into a newer thing. On the other side of the marathon, you've you know, got kind of a new voice for the show, as it were, and you're having these other guests on and that sort of thing. How do you see it continuing to evolve, and do you have any immediate plans for anything like another marathon, or any plans for just what you're doing with the regular part of the show?
I mean, we're doing fundraisers once a month, so I think it's going to evolve naturally. We don't know what it is, but like 2 weeks, we're watching all of Big Lake with a lot of the cast and crew, nice. The Gethard Comedy Central show. Next month, we're watching all of Studio 60 with as many people as I can get. And then the month after that, I think we're doing Muppets Tonight, the ABC show from the 90s.
I like that show.
Yeah, I do too. So I don't know what it's going to turn into. I feel like we've sort of fallen into a groove, which could be a good thing or could be bad for us in the long run. You know, like I don't think we will get stuck in a rut. I think if things aren't fun or certain things aren't working, we will change that too.
Yeah, I mean the rut that we are stuck in is not the show. It is the current pandemic. That's the rut that we are stuck in. I think if things were normal, we probably wouldn't be doing this show.
Yep.
Not the way we're doing it, certainly. I don't think we would, for one thing, I don't think we would be able to, I think there is something about the current circumstance which makes it make sense for us to do shows that are 4 hours long and then once a month do a show that is 12 hours long. I think if film and TV production were open and we could go to stores and movies and all sorts of other things, maybe we would still we would maybe keep doing a digital stream of the show, or maybe we don't know what it's going to be like a year from now. Maybe this evolves into something where once the pandemic is over, it evolves into something else beyond that.
Yeah.
We genuinely don't know. But for now, it very much is, we're in this moment. Because for one thing, I don't know that, I think part of the reason we're able to retain our audience sometimes well past the point where we, under normal circumstances, we would have driven them away. And part of that is because people are trapped.
Yep.
So,
that's how I've been booking guests.
People are
honestly, pandemic, bad in general.
Yeah.
For talent bookers, Not bad. Pretty good.
Yeah. And, part of me thinks that maybe this evolves into something so that there's one version of events where at the end of the pandemic, we decide we're at an end point, or maybe it's something we do every now and then or something like that. Or maybe people adapt in ways where we have an audience that wants to keep seeing it and we feel like we want to keep doing it. And maybe the version of this post-pandemic is another iteration of it somehow. I wasn't necessarily sure of how long we were going to keep doing it at UCB, just because you never know what's going to happen with, everyone's, careers. And, if Griffin and I had both booked like regular roles on TV shows, or if Patrick had gotten a job that meant he had to go to Hollywood, or
if I had booked a regular role on a TV show, you didn't even bring that up. What if I had?
What if you had?
I could be Maisel's girlfriend, boyfriend. Oh no!
The range.
We do always encourage our listeners to make fan art, and if any of our listeners are listening to this, Patrick Cotnoir as the marvelous Mrs. Maisel's new girlfriend is now on the table. A simple misspeaking has led to hopefully some delightful contributions.
Oh no.
That is wonderful.
So, I also think that, like, this is going to change so many things about the way people think about life, the way people think about entertainment, and all we can do is just keep going step by step with it. 5 months ago, I didn't want to do this. And now, if I wasn't able to do it, I'm not sure what I would be doing with myself,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So just to move us on to the movie portion now, can we just can you tell us where, or people who don't know, where they can find the show?
Oh yeah, you can find it. It's every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on planetscum.live. But then if you can't watch that, we encourage you to watch it on our YouTube channel. If you just search the George Lucas Talk Show, you'll find every moment of live streamed video on there, as well as there's some pre-pandemic shows on there. There's a few Comic-Con shows, and you can watch all that on there. But yeah, it's very easy to find. We break it up into the actual show with the guests, and then we break it up into the after show afterwards, which is totally optional. It's a bunch of bullshit, screw around, fun. Ranging from 45 minutes to 6 more hours. Totally whatever you want to, get into it with.
Yeah, definitely go check it out. And if you're going to watch that marathon, but you don't want to go through the whole thing, I definitely say scrub through it, because it's actually, it's a fun document on kind of the deterioration of the human psyche after 30 hours of watching movies.
I would say the run, if you're going to watch any of it, the run from Rogue One to Empire is probably the peak, and then Paul Scheer comes in around Last Jedi, Gil Ozeri in Force Awakens. Those are also fun.
Yeah, it's brilliant stuff.
But I second the call to scrub through it. Definitely.
Yeah, I do too. But I'm just giving you, if you want the highlights, that's probably the top craziness right then.
It's so good. And now I want to bring us on to the movie challenge that has been brought to us by our guests. Every time we have a guest, a movie is suggested. And this time Patrick came to me with the Muppet Movie. Mm-hmm. So tell me what brings that to your mind when it comes to a suggestion like this.
Well, I knew Connor and I were both going to be on, and I know that we both have a deep love for that movie, a deep connection to that movie. I'm not going to say a rainbow connection, but I'm going to say a deep connection. And I noticed that you hadn't done it, and I don't think you've done any Muppet movies.
We have not done any Muppet movies, but we have done Dark Crystal, and we have done Labyrinth, which are in the Jim Henson workshop of things, but we had not done any. We had discussed it recently.
Okay.
When you said that, that's why I responded to you. Sometimes somebody names the perfect movie. We had literally been talking about it and discussing which one we would do.
That's great. So I was trying to rectify that error. I saw that, and I was like, this is our chance to swoop in and talk about this. Because we could have talked about Star Wars. We could have talked about whatever, but we've also talked about Star Wars to death, and it's, there's only...
And
I will say this. The world doesn't need 2 more white guys talking about Star Wars for any more time than it already has.
But also tune into our show every Sunday.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would say there was actually many attempts. We made several attempts to do a George Lucas talk show at UCB that would celebrate the anniversary of the Muppet movie, and they all fell through.
Yeah. And it was mostly we were hinging on one person, and the schedule just didn't keep work. We were trying to get one person, then we were going to build it out from there, and it just didn't.
Okay. Yeah. So I did tease at the beginning that Patrick had another job that was listed, and this is related to the Muppets. According to your IMDb, you were an intern on Sesame Street.
That is true. That is very true.
So what is that experience like being on that set?
I mean, it's wild. I can try to run through my history with that show very quick because there's a long story that gets to it. When I was a kid, Carol Spinney had put out his autobiography, his memoir, and we went to go see him give a talk at UConn. I was like 12 or so, something like that. And he was giving a Q&A, and I, being the cute old kid that I was like, hey, do you ever give tours of the set? And he was like, no, not usually, but you got to know somebody. And he like did one of those like little winks, you know? So I was like, oh, that's cool, whatever, fine. So we like go get our book signed, and get a picture with him. And months later, I send my photo off to him to get signed. He sends it back. And a few weeks after that, I get a postcard saying, hey, if you ever want to come to the set, give me a call. And I was like, yeah. So I went to the set 3 times when I was a kid. I like actively wanted to work on that show. It was like the dream job. I used to want to be a puppeteer, and then that sort of fell by the wayside because, you know, not everybody can do that. But it worked out where I met the right people and knew the right people, and it just got me into interning there for, I want to say it was 1.5 years, I think, somewhere around there. Maybe 1 year. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I was there for the last 3 days that Frank Oz has performed on Sesame Street to date. I was there for Jerry Nelson's last time playing the Count. I was there right before Kevin Clash left. I was there right before Fran Brill left. Like it was this weird time in like 2012, late 2012, 2013, where a lot of the OG people were leaving and not working on the show as much anymore or at all anymore.
Patrick, do you think it was because of you?
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm not going to deny that I went up to some of them and was like, maybe it's time.
I was thinking you were such a good intern, but they didn't like you, and they're like, it's either him or me, and they're like, out of here, Kevin Clash.
Yeah, well, if that was the case, I would still be working there today. But yeah, I mean, it's a crazy place to work, and it's what you want it to be. It's very fun, and I wish everyone could go visit it at some point in their life, because it's a wild place to go see in person.
Yeah. Now, what is it about just the Muppets that seem to capture people? Is like, I always thought it was maybe just their connection to our childhood with Sesame Street and all these other things. But I was like, I think there's something beyond that now, because I know adults who are still discovering it, who didn't watch Sesame Street and all these other things. And it's everybody feels the same about the Muppets. Nobody doesn't like the Muppets because that's like, there's like a sociopathy about that.
Well, here's something connected to that. Last night after the show, I couldn't sleep. And something I like to do is just search Twitter and be like, who can I block? Who do I not want to see their opinions on anything for? So I decided to search the phrase, in quotes, the Muppets are stupid. And I was like, I'm going down this list. And I went back to 2010 and I could only find 25 people to block, which is pretty good, I think. Yeah. Like, that feels like something where you would get more just by the law of odds. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is that connects people. I think it does have the childhood nostalgia. I would be curious to know if kids today have that same connection to them, especially because they're not pumping out stuff at the same rate that they once were. And that, things have changed in the last 30 years since Jim's gone, some for the better, some for the worse. I think anyone would say that. But I don't know what the connection, I don't know. I think it's just, it's fun and it's funny and people, it's just pure joy. And I think that's important to people. Mm-hmm. Connor?
My connection to the Muppets?
Yeah, no,
Or
but
just,
like, why do you think people like it? What is the connection that people have to it?
I mean, I think they were funny, and I think that they were funny in a way that I think that the mix of being actually funny and also being incredibly sincere. I think those are two very, very simple and powerful weapons that if you know how to deploy them, people get hooked. You know, it really is like Jim Henson. You know, there are. It's not just about the puppets, because I feel like that was almost like a gimmick that he kind of fell into. I think he would have been good with anything, you know. But I think he created funny characters. I think that he and he knew how to be sincere without being like sappy, you know. Like he knew how. Those are just like, there's something about the work, particularly like the when you look at the early work where they were figuring out what the Muppets are, what Sesame Street is. You know, a lot of it is just very still kind of cool. You know, it's like there's a great video that was like the way they sold Sesame Street, and there's a joke in it that's so funny. I don't think it would fly today. But they had like a room full of puppets who were like executives. They were like executive Muppets, and they were debating what they were like saying. So what is this Sesame Street? And had one of the executive Muppets say, "Wait, so you're telling me that this is a show for kids who don't know how to read or count?" And like, yeah, they're like, why don't we call the show "Hey, Stupid"? And that is obviously that's not a joke that would make it onto Sesame Street. Maybe it would have made it on in the early days or something. But I mean, like, that is really funny. And that it's 2020, and like when you tell people that joke, it's still funny.
Yeah.
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 That's, yeah. And I also you see it in the actors who work with them and stuff, in the cameos in this movie and on Sesame Street and all these other things. You don't see an actor working with Jim Henson with a puppet on his arm, or Frank Oz with a puppet on his arm, or whatever. You see that actor working with Kermit the Frog or Miss Piggy, looking into that puppet's eyes and buying in 100%. And I mean, sometimes it's easier than others. I mean, Mark Hamill's working with Yoda because Frank Oz is buried in the ground. But it's like to me, it's just, you can see that everybody has that connection. And I think it really pays off, especially when it comes to these cameos and stuff like that, that somebody's not playing to a puppet, which then somehow makes them above the other thing.
I think it's interesting watching the early Muppet shows because people don't really know how to play it. Like when you watch like early season one, when the show hasn't aired yet. Oh, excuse me. People don't really know what the deal is. Like you get their first episode is a dancer named Juliet Prowse, and the second episode is a model as Twiggy. And it's like not necessarily the people that you would expect to be doing a comedy variety show with a bunch of puppets. And it was truly because it was who they could get. And you watch the show progress and move on, and as the show becomes the biggest fucking thing in the world, you get the Milton Berles, and you get the Bob Hopes and the Julie Andrews and everybody who's like huge. And they're there to have fun. They've seen the show. They know what works. And I think once they figured out, hey, these are the things that make a good guest star. Here's what we can tell you. Here's how it works. And I think it's honestly, not to bring it back to the Gethard show, I think and the Lucas show even. Yeah. You tell them, you're like, this is how you will be funny on this show. If you do this, it won't work. If you do this, it will work. Stick to it and you'll have a good time, because if you veer off and do something different, we won't look stupid.
Absolutely.
You will be the one who comes off looking weird.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cameos and stuff like that, and what's really interesting about the cameos, I find them to be a real timestamp of pop culture. Like, I'm watching the Muppet Movie again. I hadn't seen it in over a decade, so I decided to sit back and watch it the other day, and you see Milton Berle, Bob Hope, Cloris Leachman, just person after person, Orson Welles.
Kelly Savalas,
It was, Dom DeLuise instantly made me happy. He's always my joy bringer. But and you get that, and you get that all the way through every movie. And it's like even up till the ones today. It was what was it, Muppets Most Wanted and stuff like that. You still get, and you can look back and go, okay, I kind of get an idea of what entertainment was in that period of time. Even if you don't know who the people are, everybody is very much themselves and not playing a character. Like you had Edgar Bergen with Charlie McCarthy and stuff like that. And it's like, that was his deal. So, I mean, you get a very vivid picture of what entertainment was outside of the Muppets at that point.
And I also think the strength of those cameos in those early movies were because they were people who were living in the world then and knowing that they were a big deal and were able to appreciate that. Whereas I think some of the newer movies, I still like them a lot, but I think there's a lot of cameos in there where they try to push in the tween stars or they try to push in the people who may not necessarily have grown up with the Muppets. And you get, it's sort of it's not a laziness, but it's a, it's a disconnect that I don't think you get when you have those legendary, figures, people who know what show business is and know what entertainment is.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that the actors, like any live action actors, they're given a little bit more license to maybe be a little bit broader in character and stuff like that because they're acting against something so out of the norm? Like you can't see somebody like being so big if they're acting in against another human, but because it's against a frog, it's totally acceptable.
I mean, I think, and one of the scenes I was going to talk about, and I'm sorry to not let you talk at all, Connor, but that's how this is going to be.
Sorry, Connor.
One of the scenes I was going to talk to you about is the Steve Martin scene. And I think that he is very dialed into his stand-up persona in that scene versus his movie persona. Maybe a little bit in the earlier movies he was more like that, but he's very like, oh, hello. He's like very over the top and very like flowing in the late 70s Steve Martin persona world. And I think there's a lot of people in those movies that do that, where they're given the license to act in a way that they would not be acting in a normal movie, even though I think some of the best people in those movies are the people who treat this as if this is normal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because the other thing is that the Muppets are not always wacky. They're sometimes very subtle, and that there is also that where it's like there are examples where you have performers who underplay.
Yeah.
Up against the Muppets in ways that are very effective. I think Orson Welles is incredibly restrained in his cameo at the end. It's not he's no stranger to chewing scenery as an actor.
Yeah.
And he plays that very dialed down. He gets it entirely that it's just because these are Muppets is no reason not to play this as if it's
Yeah. But I do think on the counterpoint, and I think Connor will agree with me on this, one of the funniest people in any of the Muppet movies is Charles Grodin in Great Muppet Caper. And he's so over the top. He's so outside of any realm of normalcy, that it is funny, even though almost everyone else in that movie is treating this
But he also has moments in that movie where he's just playing to Piggy,
sure.
with, playing his in ways that it's as if he's not talking to a puppet operated by Frank Oz. He's just talking to another actor in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's really cool to see all that too, because you see the actors treating everything as perfectly normal, even if they're acting broadly and stuff like that. Nothing about talking to this frog is weird. Nothing about having a karate fight with a pig is weird. Yeah. It's just a part of their everyday deal once the movies had hit, because obviously this is the world when the Muppets and man had really coexisted.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask the stupid but probably most relevant question. What is each of your favorite Muppets?
Ooh. Now, are we talking main group or are we talking anybody?
Actually, I'll give you one of each, because I have a favorite Muppet and an underrated Muppet, and I find that a lot of the newer ones fall into the underrated because they're not a part of the main group.
I think main group, and I think we can count him as main group, is Scooter.
Mm-hmm.
Scooter's my guy.
Yeah. Well, he's the producer of it all. I get it.
I know.
That's a really hard question. I mean, I think that it's hard for me not to say Kermit, but specifically the Jim Henson iteration of Kermit, because it was an example of someone who plays the straight man in scenes and yet is funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I have a favorite Muppet. But maybe if I had to pick one, it's probably, if I'm probably being honest in terms of like, what do you get out of this character? What is, because there's some like Sam the Eagle, which I think is a very like sophisticated character for a kid's character that to basically be taking on a kind of like a certain kind of right-wing republicanism. Like even before I was aware of politics, I was aware that Sam the Eagle was like a political character.
I feel like I know your answer.
What do you think I'm going to say?
I think it's Fozzie.
No, it's not. It's not.
Really?
Here's my journey. When I'm answering this question, I start at Kermit, and then I veer toward I want to have fun. I'm a Gonzo guy. I'm going to go towards Gonzo.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know what? I love Gonzo a lot too.
But then I'm going to do a second swerve, which might take the value out of my pick. I'm going to land at Miss Piggy.
Wow.
Yeah. I think Miss Piggy is an astounding character. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
With Miss Piggy, and I think she's great. My favorite characters, I find myself diving away from people who they're like, oh, this should be your favorite. Like, this is the big person. And I've got sort of three, but sort of none. One is Animal for me. I love Animal, but I think my favorite part of Animal is Animal when he's being calmed down. Anytime when he's acting, he's just, I laugh incessantly and nothing's happening. The show has gone on and he's just standing to the side going, and it makes me laugh. Beaker makes me laugh probably harder than anybody.
Yeah.
And then maybe the Swedish Chef.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of my quote unquote favorite ones are secondary, tertiary characters. They're the New Zealands, they're the Uncle Deadlies, they're the Swedish Chefs, the Dr. Teeth to an extent. But I think I also gravitate towards the cool looking puppet. That's my thing. If it looks cool, I'm into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's a lot to it too with the characterization and stuff like that. Like you take somebody like Zoot who says nothing, and he has a moment where he's funny, and you're like, well, no, but how did that puppeteer make that thing funny? I don't like, I mean, as a proper actor, you probably understand, but I don't. I just stare at it and I'm just enthralled. I'm like, I don't know why I'm laughing now, but that's the talent of what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think it sort of, not to bring it back to Lucas again, I think those guys have sat with those characters for so long and done so many things with each of those characters that a lot like Connor and Griffin, they know what the strengths are and they know what the weaknesses are and they know what to avoid. And like, you can just live in that character because you've spent so much time thinking as that character. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, he's not. No, he says he will not correct you.
I will not correct you. I'll tell you, in the same way that I like Sam the Eagle, I also really like the Muppet Newsman, the Anchorman.
Yeah.
That was another thing that as a kid, it felt very sophisticated. And as far as like underrated Muppets, because I'm, and Patrick and I disagree on this, but like, I'm a big believer in, I think it's hard. And this is no disrespect to anybody who's taken over a Muppet voice, but I think it's very hard for me to accept with any Muppet character when a new person takes over the voice, because so much of the personality of Kermit the Frog was just naturally flowed out of Jim Henson's personality. There are voices that he did that were like character voices, like I think in some ways Rolf the dog, who's another kind of underrated character, I think. In some ways it might be easier to do that voice, which is kind of Henson doing a character voice. So you can maybe arrive at it the same way someone does an impression of someone and then you kind of do that impression. It's sort of like we can reach this thing. Whereas Kermit the Frog was almost exactly how Jim Henson spoke. There was a little bit of pitch difference, but they would say things in the same turn of phrase and that they had the same way of talking about things. And I kind of wish that when Jim Henson had died, there would have been it almost would have been like you treat Muppets like you treat cast members on Saturday Night Live, which is like, let's start bringing in more new people to replace the older Muppets.
I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think there's a world where they hypothetically, and I think this is unfortunately one of the weaknesses with the Muppets, is that the last 25 years have not been a great incubation period for new characters and new talent. I think it's been, you get the occasional one that pops through, like the Pepes and the,
Pepe, I think Pepe the Prawn, I think Bobo the Bear. I think those are two characters that are so funny.
Yeah.
And part of their value is that the performer has total freedom. There's no legacy they're having to honor. Whereas
and even like Rizzo to an extent, who was around before Jim died, but became so much more prominent after he died.
Yeah. It's so good. It does speak a lot to what they said and what like how they took on those characters. And actually, one thing that I was really noticing when I was rewatching the Muppets, and it's something I wasn't as privy to it before, but it was the improv that happens, especially during scenes when they're not on screen, like when they drive into the used car dealership, and it's just Kermit and Fozzie having the conversation, and he's like, well, when do I stop? How do I stop? And I laugh because I know that's just two guys playing off each other who've been playing off each other for so bloody long that I'm like, there's no way that exists in a script. It feels so natural. It's like the ADR in The Simpsons. It's the only time they get the opportunity to improvise.
Last year, one time when I was in LA, I was like, I've got a few hours to kill. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go find Madman Mooney's used car lot. So I found it, and it was like an hour outside of Los Angeles, and you know what? It was so worth it. It was so worth it.
That's amazing. So who did you have? Sorry, because we talked a bit about the underrated, but we didn't get one from you, Patrick. Or the newer realm. Is there somebody specific stand out for you? Or?
I mean, newer realm, more recently introduced. I think it's Bobo's my favorite for post-tension, but also I think the reintroduction and reinvention that Matt Vogel's doing with Uncle Deadly has been great. I love Uncle Deadly. He was always one of my favorites because the Vincent Price episode was huge. When I was a kid, it was one of the ones I had on VHS and would just watch over and over and over and over and over. And they never really used him a lot with Jerry Nelson. He would pop up occasionally, but it was not that much. But they've really made him into one of the lead characters now, which is kind of crazy. But he's got a big part on the new Disney Plus show. He was big on the ABC show. And I always loved that character, so it was nice.
It sort of feels like they've done with Uncle Deadly what I used to do with Star Wars characters when I was a kid, which is you'd find a character that had no lines in the movie, and you could make him whatever you wanted. You could you knew you had to play, if you were playing with Han Solo, Princess Leia figures, you had to make
the action figure, and you're like, here we go, come on, let's make him do stuff.
But it does just for Patrick just pulled out his Uncle Deadly action figure.
Yeah.
But it does feel like they were like, you know what? We can do whatever we want with this character because he hasn't really been a major player.
Yeah.
I actually, it's an interesting thing that's going on now generationally because
I know some people are struggling with the new Matt Vogel Kermit because he does sound very different, I think. It really is a shift. It's almost like it's a deeper voiced Kermit.
Yeah.
And yet I, who have been struggling since Henson's death with any iteration of Kermit that's happened, it's always sort of sounds close, but then something will happen and it'll sort of pull me out of it. I actually am, when I was watching the Sesame Street anniversary special, and I was watching the part where Elvis Costello sings It Ain't Easy Being Green with Kermit, and I was like, for the first time in a long time, I was completely relaxed just listening to this version of Kermit. I wasn't focused on does it feel like Henson? And it may be because there have been enough time has passed now that I'm ready to accept new Kermit, right as another generation is like, no, there can't be a different Kermit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are you like that? Is that very specific to your connection to the Muppets? Or I know you've done some live tweets on cartoons, Looney Tunes, and Disney going all the way back. Now, when you get like a post Mel Blanc Bugs Bunny, do you have the same feeling, or is it very specific?
I think for those kinds of things, my problem is more that it's hard to keep comedy. It's hard to take old comedy and find a way to make it new, because like they've done like shows that are more like Bugs Bunny and Daffy live in the same house together, and it's more like a Seinfeld kind of sitcom. I'm like, well, it's different, but it's the same. But like I imagine like I don't think that whenever any of the Simpsons casts are no longer able to do the Simpsons, that we will want to hear more Simpsons with new voices. Like I don't think we want to hear anyone other than Julie Kavner be Marge Simpson. And I struggle with that kind of thing, because I think with voice actors, it sometimes feels to me like the same way that like when the Beatles stopped making music, we didn't pretend that Wings was the Beatles. We're like, Paul McCartney has a new band. We don't say like, well, this is the new Beatles. You have to appreciate it as a new thing. And sometimes I wonder about whether or not, even though a lot of incredibly talented people work on things that are rebooted older things, or like continued things that have been around for 30 years or 50 years or 90 years or whatever it is, I sometimes wonder, are we being deprived of the new characters that some of those same talented people might create? Like if Bugs Bunny cartoons had existed during the Civil War, then by the time Bugs Bunny cartoons actually existed, would they still be a vital thing? Like it is a relatively new thing, the idea that you create a character and then you just keep doing it. I mean, it's not like Shakespeare plays where, every generation has multiple Hamlets and multiple Lady Macbeths, or, these are things where you can still see the old ones, you can still see the original. If we had footage of the original Hamlet, I might be like, the new Hamlets, they should just stick with that first guy. He was great,
Yeah. And the way you mentioned The Simpsons too, I remember because there was some contract stuff with Harry Shearer and there was a chance he wasn't going to be on it. And I'm like, if that goes
contract stuff with Harry Shearer.
I know. But my first thought was, when it was possible that they were going to say, okay, he's not going to be there, I'm like, then the first episode needs to be death of Lovejoy Smithers, Ned. Like all of them have to have been hit by a meteor that only affected them. And I was like, because there's no way that characters that iconic, I mean the viewership and whatever, like, but I can't dip into an episode and then hear somebody else do those voices.
But that's another, I think the Simpsons have a similar thing with the Muppets, where maybe by choice they have not really introduced too many recurring characters post season 10, we'll say, hypothetically, where I think there have been a few people that have taken over voices. Gray Griffin started taking over like the Rusty Taylor voices a few years ago when she passed. But I feel like that could be another incubation place where it's like, well, you can just replace them with these new characters and people move out of the town and it's fine and we can do that,
Yeah, well, if they invent new characters for the current cast to do, there's no reason they couldn't invent new characters for different people to do.
Exactly.
All right. Now, I want to bring it back to the Muppets, and I want to talk about probably the thing I have the strongest reaction to in any Muppet movie, their legs. Whenever their legs are working, I freak out. And am I alone on this, or is this a thing that is shared?
I'm pro legs. I'm very pro legs.
I mean, I think it's interesting because like Kermit riding a bike is part of the reason for this movie to exist, is like they're doing things that they couldn't do on the Muppet Show. The Muppet Show is a stage-bound sketch comedy where everything is built so that you're just seeing from the waist up. And Kermit riding a bike is still something that you look at and you think like, how is that possible? I think Kermit and Fozzie on stage, full-bodied, it's jarring, but also it's just for a moment. It's not I think they have fun with things like let's throw Kermit into the fan, and where it's clearly just fabric flopping around and dumped over. So I think it's like, I would not be in favor of a Muppet movie in which they were full body the whole time.
Yeah,
I think that would bother me. I like a certain amount of just framing being the thing that makes the Muppets come to life. But I think it's important to do that to distinguish the movie from the TV version.
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm pro leg is because I came to the Muppets from a very strong, I'm curious about how they do everything behind the scenes perspective, not, oh, these are real things that I'm watching on TV. I know they're puppets. I know they're not real. Whereas Connor, we still got to remind him sometimes.
It's also they didn't just take like, well, we're going to show their legs and not just a gratuitous thing. It's actually what the movie is about.
Yes.
The movie is about Kermit's legs. So if you don't show his legs enough, then it would be more distracting because you're like, what legs?
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
That they took a thing that was a challenge and they looked it square in the eye and said, not only are we going to show the Muppets' legs, we are going to draw attention to them by making them the focal point of the entire film.
For sure. And the like for me though, I still get over. I think it was in the Jason Segel, like the first Muppets one, and there's a shot of him just sitting on a bench, not Kermit, but his buddy there, and he's just his legs are just swinging, just like swinging in the breeze, but in a way that you would do if your feet were hitting the ground. And I don't know, it just brings such a weird level of joy to me that is, I don't know, was feeling unhealthy because I'm like, I shouldn't be this excited about such a thing.
Yeah.
But I want to move it along. I want to talk about some key scenes of the movie or some favorite scenes of the movie. I'll leave it to you guys first.
And this is just, I think that obviously I think the finale is a particularly magical thing. The part where they're putting the movie together and then the set falls apart. And then there's this, I think it's you wouldn't necessarily think from the way this movie is going that it was building to something that like kind of moving and spectacular. And then that final shot where you see all of the Muppets together, it's so impressive. Mm-hmm. I think another thing is when they when they pull out the script midway through the movie and catch up to like how they got there by reading the screenplay to the movie they're in. That's like a Monty Python move. That's like I don't know that anybody had done that kind of a joke in a movie with the exception of maybe, like there's a few examples of things like that. Like maybe like in Blazing Saddles when they go into the movie theater and the movie exists, but it's still such a hip joke that they pull off so well. The Mel Brooks torture scene, because it's like this is a, the Muppets were, they didn't shy away from dark stuff. And he's basically, this guy is, it's Mel Brooks, playing what seems to be a disgraced Nazi scientist, in the same way that Sesame Street, took on Donald Trump before his rise to power with the Donald Grump character on Sesame Street. I like it when the Muppets go after the Nazis.
It's a good side of history to land on, I guess.
Yeah, could be much worse.
Yeah, and I mean, if Mel Brooks isn't playing a version of a Nazi, he's not being as Mel Brooks as he can be.
Yeah.
And actually, that leads directly into one of my favorite scenes in the thing, or the one that kind of was the most jarring and made me laugh the hardest, was the Miss Piggy fight when she's rescuing Kermit from said machine.
Yeah.
And we've seen her fight a million times, but that's the only one, and I didn't remember it until I saw it. They changed her eyes.
Yeah.
And she's got these big Coke eyes all of a sudden. And
there's a woman, Kathy Mullen, who was a performer for them. She played Moki on Fraggle Rock, and she was also Yoda's right hand, I think, in Empire Strikes Back.
It's a great hand.
She started working for the Muppets during the Muppet Movie, and her first job was to build those eyes for Miss Piggy.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I remember, and my favorite part of that whole thing is the part where she finally jumps off the loft onto the landing, because it was basically just them shoving a puppet over the edge, and it just it's the simplest comedy sometimes gets you, and I can just picture those guys go like trying to think of a funny way to make her jump or a technological way to make her jump.
For sure.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I think Kermit and Rolf singing a duet together, which is another thing that it's like this would have been much harder to do on the Muppet Show. It's something they could do in a movie, is to have Jim Henson sing a duet as the two different characters. And I used to listen to that. I mean, the soundtrack is perfect.
Perfect.
And
the soundtrack meaning the songs, and the soundtrack meaning the like orchestral
score. Yeah,
I think it's great.
But the songs are so such a perfect dynamic blend. They're memorable, they're funny, they're beautiful, and really like make the movie. They take the movie to another level.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And interesting, the scene you were talking about too, Connor. During my research this week, I found out that John Landis was puppeteering Grover during that final scene, and Tim Burton is one of them, but I don't know which, because that was as far as my research took me.
Right.
But that kind of stuff blows my mind, and just the gravitas of having that many puppeteers under this. In this 7-foot pit, and just having, because I mean, you look at it and it's like, oh, it looks like something they would do on The Simpsons, where they have a picture of every character, and I'm like, well, that's easy to do when you're drawing it, but when you're mushing a bunch of people together.
And I mean, the other crazy thing I think you have to keep in mind is they shot the Muppet Show in London and they shot the Muppet Movie in LA. So a lot of the go-to extra hands that they would have for the Muppet Show are all hanging out in London because they live there. So they had to, I think they had to reach out to like the Puppeteers of America, the LA chapter, and be like, listen, we will take anybody you got. Anyone you got, you want to send down, we'll take them.
That's awesome. Patrick, do you have any other standouts?
I mean, there's so many jokes in it that I didn't get. I don't want to say until recently, but like much later, after dozens of years. Like, I didn't know what a Hare Krishna was, you know? And that's it's a huge recurring joke in that movie. And I just was like, oh, it's just a funny word. Like, I didn't know what it meant, you know? I think the Carol Kane recurring joke is very funny. The myth, yes. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much stuff in it. Like, it's just jam-packed. There's not really a lull in the movie. Like, it's not relentless, but it's relentless in its pace and in its jokes and it's like it never stops or slows down.
It's also a movie about show business that has a very pure, like, the motivation to make millions of people happy.
Yeah.
Combined with the idea that you don't want to sell out your principles for money. Like, it's a very interesting movie about the entertainment industry because it's trying to be on the right side of things. It's about
I think the other thing that is really great about it is that even though it was not $100 million movie, it's shot really well, and it's directed by a guy who's like a real like he's like a, you know, when I say real, I mean a non-puppet director.
Yeah. So
like, which I've heard was a nightmare on set because he didn't necessarily know how to do a lot of stuff or like to make it work the best way for them.
He didn't know how to do a lot of stuff.
He didn't know how to direct. He's like, I say action. Why do I see these felt guys? But he.
It's an excellent film. It's so well directed. It's amazing that someone was able to. On the one hand, the Muppet guys didn't know how to make a movie yet.
Yeah.
And this guy had never done Muppet stuff before. And the idea that it wasn't. I mean, this could have been a disaster.
This could
and it should have been. It probably
should have been a disaster.
Yeah.
And yet it ended up being, and I say this only partly in jest. Citizen Kane is the second greatest movie that Orson Welles had anything to do with, and that's just because
Transformers the movie being number one.
Yeah.
No, just the fact that like on my list of personal movies, I love Citizen Kane, but Orson's a little bit higher in the ranking with the Muppet Movie.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, the way movies speak to you, you can't. There's no accounting for that.
Citizen Kane was more influential. True. I don't think Muppet Movie necessarily influenced. I don't see other movies that take their cue from the.
But I would
Muppet
say
movie.
Personally, more influential for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't see a lot of other movies that are like the Muppet movie.
No.
Mm-hmm. But I think there's things that people take now that don't even realize they're taking from Citizen Kane, like shooting a roof or like a ceiling. And it's like, because they didn't exist at such a time. And it's like, wow, you could do that. And now it's just subconscious. It's nobody even knows. But to speak again, just to the technological and again, the balls of this movie really was what at the end with Animal. Okay, well, we're going to do like a mini set and have Animal's head pop out. No, we're not. We're going to build a gigantic animal.
Yeah.
And like that's crazy. Like that's crazy to me, because that's basically the producers and all that coming at Jim Henson going, well, this is the easy way to do it. And he's like, I'm not interested in the easy way.
Do it real. Yeah. Practical. All practical.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, I think that wraps it up for us. Thank you so much for bringing this movie to us and being our first step in to the Muppet universe on Miscast Commentary. And everybody go check out the George Lucas Talk Show on planetsgun.live on Sundays at 8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or on YouTube any moment of the week.
Or on YouTube
between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. That's the only time you can't watch it on YouTube.
That's it. It's a blackout period. You just get some rest that hour and then come back. And then you can listen to Dead Eyes. That's available just about anywhere, right, Connor?
Anywhere that podcasts are found.
Awesome. So if you can find us, you can find him and go listen to that. Guys, thank you so much. I will close just very briefly by saying you two have a genuine role in the existence of this show. There was that one episode of Gethard where he is standing there and he's like, I want to know what this person's Chris Gethard show is. I want to know what this person's Chris Gethard show is. Yeah. That night at 4:00 in the morning, I texted my co-host and pitched the idea for this show. That's where that came from. And you two were a very big part of that show and a very big part of my love for that. So I say thank you for entertaining me then. Thank you for keeping me entertained now during all this, and thank you so much for joining me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
All right, thanks.